time. Right, welcome to Private Sessions 101. I'll start with a quick acknowledgement of country. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet. And I would also like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Of course, we're all on various different lands. All of my guests and I are based in Sydney, but we have a national audience. So I'm on Gadigal land at the moment. And of course, everyone is on various traditional lands. So just a quick summary of how we're going to go. We have 3 guests today who I will introduce in a second, and we'll go, we have some structured questions to take them through, and after that there'll be a Q&A with questions that people submitted in the Eventbrite registration and anything that comes through in the Q&A box in the Zoom or the Facebook comments. This webinar is being recorded as well as live streamed to the PWDA and Your Story Disability Legal Support Facebook pages. Auslan and captions are available. To turn on captions, go to the toolbar at the bottom of your screen and click on the button labeled CC Live Transcript. Please do post in the chat if you're having any tech issues. We've got people monitoring to help out. Let's see. Right, asking questions. On Zoom, please do use the Q&A function to ask questions, not the chat. And it does have an option to ask a question anonymously if you'd like. For everyone on the Facebook stream, hello, please post your questions in the comments. And if we don't have time to get to your question, we'll try to respond on Facebook or via email, depending on how you're joining us today. And if this webinar raises any concerns that you'd like to talk through, free counselling is available. You can call Blue Knot on 1-800-421-468. There'll be details in the chat as well. All right, let's start introducing people. Let's start with Rania. Rania is a mobile lawyer at Your Story Disability Legal Support, where she gives free legal advice and support to people considering sharing their stories with the Disability Royal Commission. Before joining Your Story, Rania worked in both family litigation and grants at Legal Aid New South Wales. Rania is a person with lived experience of disability and a mother to 3 young children, 2 of whom have been diagnosed with a disability in the past year. She has spent her adult life advocating for the rights of people with disability to have access to services, employment, and to the community. Danielle is a disability advocate at People with Disability Australia, who specialises in supporting clients to tell their story at the Disability Royal Commission. Prior to joining PWDA, Danielle spent 5 years working as a disability researcher and accessibility consultant in the public and private sector. She has focused much of her research, consulting and advocacy in the youth sector, and in 2019 was CEO of Australia's largest youth-led not-for-profit, UN Youth Australia. Danielle is a recent University of New South Wales law graduate and is currently completing her honours year for a Bachelor of Social Research and Policy on the impacts of climate disaster on disabled communities in the Philippines. And Netta from Blue Knot, Dr. Netta Fliederman is a clinical psychologist and supervisor who has 15 years experience working in the complex trauma space in public, private, and not-for-profit organizations. Netta is passionate about this work and the life-changing benefits she sees for clients she supports. She's currently the manager of the National Counselling and Referral Service delivered by the Blue Knot Foundation, supporting people with disability and who have experiences of violence, abuse, neglect, and exploitation. All right, let's get to it. Question 1 of our structured questions is, what is the Disability Royal Commission and why should I share my story and my ideas with them? I'm thinking that many of you probably do know what the Royal Commission is, but I'll do a quick overview. A Royal Commission is an investigation into an important matter with legal powers similar to a court. It's created by the government but runs independently, and it makes recommendations about things the government should change. The Disability Royal Commission is investigating violence, abuse, neglect, and exploitation of people with disability, all kinds of people with all kinds of disability everywhere in Australia, and across all settings in Australia. So it's a pretty big job, and they have a lot to cover. So why should you participate and tell your story to the Royal Commission? I'll invite our guests to tackle this question, starting with Netta from Blue Knot.
Thank you, Maggie. So first, I would say telling your story may be part of your healing journey. And again, I'm saying may be part of your healing journey because we all have different journeys. We all have different pace, but what we're finding out is sometimes telling your story is part of undoing shame and guilt around your trauma history or your abuse, neglect, or exploitation. People able to share their stories safely with appropriate support with them are reporting having better well-being and outcome in terms of how they feel around their shame and their guilt and being free to live their lives. Sharing your story can really help others. That's probably, I'm gonna give the other guest room to say more maybe about that, but obviously part of that is helping others not go through the same history that you had or same experiences, and also being public about it or being able to share your story is allowing others to undo their shame and their guilt about their experiences. So that can really support your journey.
Thanks so much, Netta. Rania, would you like to sort of describe why people should talk to the Royal Commission from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I really do think it's personal choice, whether, you have to decide whether it's the right decision for you to share your story with the Royal Commission. But crucially, I think that this is an opportunity for us to have our voices heard and to highlight our experiences, both good and bad, with the goal of effecting change in our nation. And one thing that I hear quite a lot from my clients who share their story with me is that quite often, even though they have been through traumatic incidences, quite often they say to me, one of the reasons why they want to share is because they want to prevent what happened to them happening to other people. And I think, it is amazing that in the midst of our own grief and our own difficulties, people with disability and carers and family members really do want to prevent this from continuing to happen. And I think the more stories that are being told, the stronger the impact, when it is heard from the Disability Royal Commission.
Thanks, Rania. Danielle, would you like to add anything?
I don't think there's a whole lot I can add to Netta and Rania's responses, but I think I just pull on a thread that Rania mentioned and talk a bit about how the more diverse stories the Royal Commission hears, the more diverse experiences, it ensures that the future of the policy sector regarding disability takes into account our diversity of experience. Disability and the exploitation, abuse that we face as a community looks really different for everyone. And that means every story counts. We're not just looking for one type of story, we're looking for everyone's story. So I think that's really important as a reason to share.
Thanks, Danielle. Question 2, what is a private session? So basically, you may be aware that this week the Royal Commission is actually having a public hearing on education. Public hearings are one of the 3 main pathways that people can use to share their experiences with the Royal Commission, and they're the sort of big official live streamed thing, and relatively few people get to speak at a public hearing, and probably relatively few people want to, because it's quite a big task. Submissions and private sessions are a bit more accessible and easier to organize. Basically, a submission is literally anything you want to send the Royal Commission. They will accept a TikTok if that is what makes the most sense for you to create. And you can send them actually as many submissions as you want. You can make different submissions about different areas. If you think of extra stuff, you can send them extra stuff. That's kind of it's just open through December this year. You can just send them anything that's relevant to to what they're investigating. Private sessions are a bit more specific. It's where you actually speak face-to-face, or not face-to-face at the moment, but person with a specific Royal Commissioner. You have a conversation and you tell them your story in that kind of personal context. So Rania, could you tell us a bit more about private sessions and what sort of special legal protections they offer?
So private sessions are the most private way to share your story with the Disability Royal Commission. The Royal Commission cannot disclose or share information from a private session without your consent. So there is a limited exception to this rule. Information from a private session remains confidential for 99 years after the Royal Commission ends, and it cannot be subpoenaed or requested under freedom of information. Private sessions also have protections attached to them, so it becomes a criminal offence for anyone to use what you say against you in any civil or criminal case in court. This doesn't apply to tribunals. It becomes an offence if anyone causes you any hurt, punishment, damage, loss, or disadvantage, dismiss you or disadvantage you in your job, or to record, use, or disclose what you say without your permission. Now, these protections are really important because quite often we find that people are concerned about their personal safety when they want to share their story with the Royal Commission. And so these protections go a long way to making people feel comfortable about engaging with the Royal Commission.
That's right. And I should also mention that you can also do a submission there's a privacy box you can tick that says, don't share my information with anyone. And then it's also subject to the 99 years, no freedom of information, no subpoena clause. There are a few, obviously, if you are speaking in a private session, you don't even have your story written down. So it is the most private way to have that conversation. But there are some aspects of this privacy law do also apply to submissions. So back to private sessions, Danielle, you're an advocate, you're an individual advocate at People with Disability Australia. So you actually personally support people to go through the process of making a submission or going to a private session. Could you sort of go through step by step and tell us what to expect if you're going to do a private session?
Yes, of course. So there's a few steps involved in the process, and I'll just kind of go from the beginning. So the first step is that we have to submit a request to the Disability Royal Commission to request an appointment and to notify them that you are interested in attending a private session. And we'll talk about this a little later, but there is quite long wait times for that at the moment. But after you make that request, you'll receive an email from the Disability Royal Commission about when they can speak to you about your private session. So this isn't the private session conversation. You have a conversation beforehand where you sort of go through what you want to talk about, the type of support you have, or the type of support that you need. And they'll also answer questions about the private session that you might have. Let you know how long it's going to take till you can attend a private session, and basically act as a one-on-one FAQ. After that, your private session date will be booked in. And if you're working with an advocate like myself, that's when we will begin to prepare an outline for the 50 minutes and how and what you want to talk about in that time. So there can be a lot of things that people want to talk about, a lot of experiences, but obviously you only have about an hour to do that. So having a bit of a guide going in can help you stay on task and sort of remember everything you want to say. On the day of the private session, you can also bring in a written submission with more information. So you can choose to focus on one issue in the private session and then have multiple issues in a written submission that you can present to the commissioner on the day. On the day in the room, you'll have the commissioner, a Royal Commission lawyer, yourself, and then any other support persons you'd like present. So this can be an advocate. Sometimes you can have a lawyer from your story come with you, a social worker, a friend or family member. A social worker or counsellor will be available outside if you need to speak to them before the session begins and also after the session begins. The commissioner during the session will explain what is going to happen, and the lawyer will ask you if you are comfortable for them to record the session with an audio recorder. If they say no, then they will transcribe some notes. And this is basically to make sure that if there's any disclosures that Rania mentioned before, that such as there is harm to someone or yourself, like immediate danger, then they have a record of that. After that, you'll basically be given the floor. So you can kind of then choose to speak on your story however is most comfortable to you. The commissioner is likely going to ask you some questions to kind of guide the conversation, but you don't have to answer those questions. A lot of the questions are going to be focused on what you wish had happened differently and what you would like to see change. So they're not really going to try to ask, they're not necessarily going to ask you questions on the specifics of your trauma. They're more interested in what do you wish would happen moving forward. After your time is up, one of the Royal Commission counsellors will do a check-in with you, ask you if you have any questions, and ask you about any follow-up support that you might need. And then that's basically the end. And if you have an advocate involved, we'll definitely encourage you to seek ongoing counselling support, because after sharing your story, it can be a pretty intense time. A lot of emotions can come up, and it's important that you have the supports around you to look after yourself afterwards.
Thanks, Danielle. And I see there's a question in the chat from Penelope. Does it have to be in person, or can it be online or by telephone? Currently, the vast majority are going to be online or by telephone. They're actually sort of a bit separate. You can give evidence by telephone, not necessarily talking to a private commissioner in a private session. You can do a telephone submission, where if you don't want to write down your story, you can make an appointment to talk to one of their staff on the phone. But for private sessions, yes, they are currently doing pretty much all of them via Zoom for COVID safety reasons. But if you're having trouble with technology access, I've been told that if there is a Royal Commission office close to you, you can go there in person and have them organize the tech for you, and then they will have a screen there that the commissioner appears on. And so that way they are just basically trying to avoid taking out the entire Royal Commission with COVID, just in case. So we will get to that a little bit later, but yes, you can certainly, you can and probably will do it online. Netta, while we're still on what happens during the private session, Netta, do you want to add anything to that?
Happy to add that while going through private sessions or just considering, we can always support you with trauma-informed phone counselling, which is part of the support available for people engaging with the Disability Royal Commission or considering to engage, even if they will decide that they're not planning to put a submission. So the support we are offering, in which I will speak on probably in the next few questions, is available for people during their private sessions. And I highly recommend connecting with us, because we all need emotional support at times. This is just a human thing when we're dealing with sensitive experiences we had or we've been through live. Emotions are coming up. This is not bug in our system. This is just the way we operate in the world. It's not weakness. It's not good or bad. It's just the way it is with us humans. So our emotional support is available.
Sorry, I was just muted there. Thank you, Netta. And on that topic, the next question is about what kinds of support are available for a private session. So let's start with you, Netta. What kind of support does Blue Knot provide for people who are considering or are going to a private session?
Yes, of course. So National Counselling and Referral Service at Blue Knot provides trauma-informed phone counselling, as well as funded referrals for face-to-face counselling support or advocacy, as well as information about trauma and trauma impacts. When I say counseling, we all have different, narratives and experiences around counseling. So maybe I can break it down to what is counseling and who is counseling for. So counseling is emotional support. Counseling is for everyone. If you had in the past negative experience with counseling, it was probably not a good fit. So counseling should feel safe. Counseling is a space for you to explore what's coming up for you, things that had happened to you or things that are currently happening. for you. And when I say feel safe, we will work with you to get to know your nervous system and learn how to regulate it. So we can share a lot of information around trauma and the trauma impact in the way that will help you to work with your nervous system. If you're interested in long-term face-to-face support, we can link you with funded services, counseling services and advocacy services as well. And what is most important for me to say that it's not something that, so our counseling will be tailored for your needs. It's not the same. Any call to the National Counseling and Referral Service would sound completely different because we all have different needs and we're coming from different places. So we're very diversity aware and sensitive. And I invite just giving it a go.
Thanks, Netta. Rania and Danielle, do you want to add anything about what kinds of support your organizations offer for private sessions? Sorry, Danielle, would you like to go first?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I wasn't sure who's going to go first. So yeah, as I said earlier, disability advocate from PWD can attend a private session with you. And we usually do some prep work before and some work afterwards to make sure you have the right supports as well. In the room, we don't really say anything unless you ask us to. So we're really led by you if you want a prompt or if you want us to remind you of what's written in your submission, we can do that. But also if you just want someone to sit there and like be a witness to make sure everything goes the way you want it to go, we can also do that. So yeah.
Thanks. Rania?
Yeah, I guess the only thing I'd add is that in some circumstances, not all the time, we can support clients as well through the intake process and attending the private sessions.
Awesome. So we mentioned earlier that there is a wait time at the moment. Rania, would you like to tell us a bit more about the current situation with private sessions and wait times?
Absolutely. So we reached out directly to the Royal Commission to ask them this question, and they've advised us that the current wait time is about 4 to 5 months, although experiences may vary from person to person, and one person may wait longer than another. But they said that they will try their best to see everyone within 5 months of their registration. They've also told us that based on the current registration rate, they hope to offer everyone who registers by the 30th of June the opportunity to participate in a private session, but they won't know the final number of people who have requested a private session until registrations close at the end of the month. And lastly, also, and you mentioned this earlier, Maggie, the Royal Commission have indicated that due to the current COVID climate, they intend on holding all private sessions via telephone or video conference to ensure the safety of participants and staff. However, and this is a really important point, I think, that needs to be highlighted, they will consider requests for face-to-face sessions due to accessibility reasons on a case-by-case basis, but they can't guarantee that a person who wants a face-to-face session will get one. And the reason I want to highlight that is that because sometimes due to some people's disability, it may be that they can't engage with the Commission via telephone or via video conference. So I do encourage those people to reach out to us because we may be able to advocate for them for a face-to-face session.
Awesome, thanks, Rania. Finally, the last question in our structured bit before we get to audience questions. What if I register by the deadline of June 30th, or what if I do and it turns out that there are too many people on the list and I don't get offered a private session? What do I do then? Netta, do you want to start us off for that one?
Yeah, I can definitely refer to the emotional side of things around that type of situation. So there is still time to put a submission, of course, and it's very, very normal to be feeling anxious, stressed and very vulnerable, leading to your private session if you had one, or leading to putting a submission in general. So in that process, we're here to support you all through that days of feeling more vulnerable and stressed around forgetting or not feeling prepared. That would be our side of things.
And Rania, what are your thoughts on what should people know about, just in case they don't get a private session if they wanted one?
So we always recommend to people that they should put to paper some notes to guide their thoughts, similar to what Danielle was talking about earlier. I think it's really important to think about what the key themes and messages you want to share with the commission, and prepare some notes to guide you in your private session. And I guess if ultimately the private session doesn't come through, you can turn those notes into a submission and you can lodge them. As long as they're in by the end of the year, by the 31st of December, it's not a you haven't missed out if you don't get a private session. You still have an opportunity to engage, but what I would recommend is that you start on that sooner rather than later, because you don't want to get to November or December, you don't have a private session, you haven't prepared any notes, and then your only option then is to make a submission and get that in by the end of December.
Oh, all right. And Danielle, do you have anything to add to that?
I just add that, yeah, like PWD is funded to do DRC work up until the end of the year. So if you can't get a private session, our advocates will still be providing support to DRC clients for a written, video, audio, or visual submission up until the end of the year. So it's definitely not over if you don't get in by June 30th.
Thanks. All right, awesome. So we've covered a lot of ground today. Let's just, before we get to the audience questions, if there's one thing that people take away from this webinar, what should it be? Danielle, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think just to keep it simple, I would like to emphasize that you are in charge of this process. And what is most important is that you feel safe throughout the whole time that you are sharing your story, from reaching out to Blue Knot or PWD or Your Story, to think about doing a submission up until you've done the submission and it's all kind of, the admin side is all over. You need to take this at your pace. We know that there are some deadlines coming up, but if you don't feel safe throughout the process, then I really don't think there's a point. So don't worry too much about the deadlines. We're here to support you for the whole year. And yeah, you can do this at your pace.
Thanks, Danielle. Netta, what would you like people to take away from this webinar?
Well, I would like to say that your well-being and regulation and mental health is a priority in this process. And I think, you know, just reminding us all that we all need emotional support at times. It doesn't make us weak or otherwise, but just humans that are vulnerable. And also to remind that the National Counselling and Referral Service can support you if you're either engaging with the Disability Royal Commission or for any reason choosing not to submit your story. We're here to help and support you emotionally through that. So it's not really depending on your choice of submitting your story or not.
That's really important, Netta. Yeah, just you're not making a commitment to go through the whole thing by contacting any of our services. We are all funded to talk to people, just even if you're just considering maybe sharing your story with the Royal Commission. So don't worry about that. If you're thinking about it, if you have more questions after this, feel free to call any of us, and you're absolutely fine to just talk to us, even if you later decide that you're not going to do a submission or anything. And Rania, do you want to finish up with this question? What's the one thing people should take away from this webinar?
I think I just want to say that we recognise that the journey to making a submission can be emotional and difficult, but we hope that it is also healing. Only you can decide if, when and how you want to engage with the Royal Commission. And if you do decide to engage, just know that there is a lot of free support available to support you on this journey.
Thank you, Rania. So we are getting into the audience participation part of this webinar. We're going to start with the questions that we've gotten when people signed up when people registered. Actually, let's get back to Rania for this one. First question is, what if I've signed a confidentiality agreement with the service I work for? How will this impact me if I want to make a submission about my experience there?
I would encourage you to contact 1-800-771-800 and make an appointment for legal advice with a lawyer from your story. The reason for this is because everyone's circumstances are different, and we need to hear more details about your particular case to be able to give you catered legal advice for you. And just know that when you engage with our service, our conversations are kept confidential, and we are completely independent from the Disability Royal Commission, so that I won't have access to any engagement that you have with our service.
Thanks. Question 2 is how you can get rights for people with limited capacity and allow support people to be involved. So Danielle, would you like to talk about the involvement of support people and what happens when people have impairments or even legal capacity issues?
Cool. So the first thing I'd note is that even when people have limited capacities or impairments, they still have legal rights. And that is protected within Australian law and also international law. And as a rights-based organisation, that's our starting point at PWD. I think it's important that we understand different communication styles and we don't discriminate if someone can't just tell a story orally. Also ensure that there are appropriate formal and informal supports around people when they're choosing to engage with the Royal Commission. As an advocate, a lot of my role is also quite educative. So ensuring that people understand what their rights are, and also that their support people understand that regardless of capacity or impairment, our client is the person with disability. And that's going to be our focus. In terms of support people and their involvement with the DRC, I think they're really important both before you engage with a private session, during a session, and after a session. Before a session, support people are really important in providing emotional support, and support people can also contact these counselling services to find out how they can do that best. They can also attend sessions with the participant and their advocate if the participant consents. So I will always check with the person telling their story first to make sure that they're okay with the support person coming. But if they consent to that, then you can be in the room, help them in the ways that you do. During a session, again, with consent, support people can attend the Royal Commission private session. And then afterwards, I think it's really important that support people provide more emotional support, but also offer encouragement. Say, you did a really good job, you did a really brave thing, because that's what people are doing when they come to the Royal Commission. They are doing a really brave thing to hope that their story will make a difference in other people's lives. And also try to ensure that the participant continues to engage with ongoing counselling and support, so that they know, that they have all the tools to keep living their life.
Yeah, great. Next question is, who cares for non-verbal individuals who are being abused and neglected by government workers currently? So that's a bit to the left of the Royal Commission, so that it is important to report any current abuse through the appropriate channels as far as is compatible with the person's safety. You can certainly share your story with the Royal Commission in an attempt to create change going forward, but the Royal Commission is not the same as a criminal court, and they don't usually hand down any kind of sentence on a person who is on an abuser or anyone. They use these stories to make policy recommendations about possibly ways that, say, laws could be changed going forward to make you safer in that situation. But if you are currently in an abusive situation, there are a variety of places that you can take that, including the police and the complaints policies of the various services involved. and we will post more information about that in the event, or possibly email it around afterwards, just so that everyone is clear on where that stands. But yes, you can certainly talk to the Royal Commission about ongoing stuff if you would like to, but you need to be clear that that is separate from actually making a complaint or laying charges against someone. Next, what protections are, oh, sorry, actually, Netta, would you like to sort of talk a little bit more about that question in terms of what kinds of support are available for people who are trying to figure out situation, counselling or otherwise?
Look, we're happy to support each case, because I think each story will be particularly different from another. Obviously, we are mandatory reporters, so if there is a safety issue, we will direct people to the right resources, and they're very welcome to contact us. There is a possibility to contact us not only via phone, but also web chat, if that will make access better. So that's another possibility. And we also, at the end of this webinar, there is a slide with our email and our phone numbers. So I think it's best to take it case by case in this matter of safety.
Yeah, definitely safety first. The next question is, what protections are in place to ensure that my testimony will not be used without my consent to pursue legal action? Let's take that one to Rania. Would you like to answer that?
Absolutely. As I talked earlier, there are protections when you engage with the Royal Commission in a private session, but also in making a confidential submission. So your submission cannot be shared or disclosed without your consent, and it remains private and confidential for 99 years after the Royal Commission ends, and can't be subpoenaed or requested under freedom of information. One thing to bear in mind, though, that these protections apply to your submission or your engagement with the Royal Commission in a private session. If you were to, for example, take the written document that you use to support your private session and share it on social media, or accidentally post it to somebody, the protections don't apply outside of your engagement to the Royal Commission. So just be mindful that when you are preparing any notes or submissions or engaging with the Royal Commission, that you keep that private, because the protections relate to your engagement with the Royal Commission only.
Awesome, thanks, Rania. We've had a question in the Q&A, which is interesting. I haven't thought about this one before. Can two people on the same topic give evidence together? Can two people do a private session together on the same topic? Does anyone want to answer that one? Rania?
Yeah, and the answer is yes, absolutely. Some people actually choose to do group submissions, so you can actually make a group submission to the Royal Commission, and I can't imagine that that would be a difficulty if you choose to do that in a private session as well. You would just need to let the Royal Commission know that there will be two of you that want to attend a private session together.
Thanks. Yeah, that was very clear. The next question is, can I give you permission to access my NDIA records just in case I don't make it to the end of the process? This person says they have a DNR and they're having a lot of problems and discrimination, particularly with the NDIS, and they don't want to keep being anxious about what's going to happen next. So that one's tricky, because that might depend on who they are giving permission to access their records. But Rania, I imagine you know what the legal situation is on that front?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the issue of access to records is probably not going to be the best way to go about you sharing your story. Having access to the records, I guess, is not going to be able to give us a voice to share your story. I think if you really want to share your story with the Royal Commission, it's always a good idea first to get some legal advice. So contact us and get booked in for advice. But don't forget there are other ways that you can engage. You could, for example, do an audio submission and send that in to the Royal Commission and mark that confidential. and that way you still have the option of sharing your story. If you do have, I guess I'll just flag, if you do have some, I guess, other legal issues, so for example, if you have a current issue with NDIA, we can also link you in to get some legal advice with a civil law lawyer, for example, to give you some advice about how to address your issues going through that NDIS process.
Thanks. And I think Danielle might also have something to add about how we can help someone who's having trouble with the NDIA, not just with the Royal Commission engagement. Yeah,
so where your issues are ongoing, as Maggie mentioned earlier, the Royal Commission can't solve the ongoing issues you're having, particularly if it's with an institute like the NDIS. At PWD, we do support people to deal with discrimination issues that might be happening with the NDIS. We can link you with services and help particularly do all the administrative work that gets really in the way of making complaints and getting issues resolved. So that's really our bread and butter here at PWD. I think in addition to what Rania said around sharing your story and being really anxious about not knowing what's going to happen next, advocates can also help in terms of linking you with services, but also I can help, or other advocates can help get the beginning of your story written at the very least, and maybe talk with other family members who might be involved in supporting you or other informal supports, so that we can get your story done in a way that is accessible to you, and also means that you know something's already written down, no matter what happens next.
Thanks, Danielle. And I think on the topic of being in an anxious state of what happened next, maybe Netta has something quick to add on that front.
Yeah, of course. So I'll be normalizing anxiety. We live in a culture that diagnoses everything, but to be anxious in these days, leading and when considering to put a submission and having a private session, it would be extremely normal to be feeling anxious and have your nervous system really heightened and activated. I think learning about anxiety, learning about your window of tolerance, learning about the nervous system and the impact it has on us is a key here. That's part of what we do. We provide phase 1 safety and stabilization type of phone counseling. So that would be our main focus, to work with your anxiety, to help you regulate your nervous system and to feel a little better, although this is a sensitive and vulnerable time.
Thanks, Netta. So the next question is, can I or we as a group do a submission on a systemic issue of discrimination that impacts a large group of people Australia-wide? So first of all, I can answer that, which is many organizations and groups do, and individuals even do make systemic submissions. You can actually find most of those on the Royal Commission's website, especially the ones that are in response to what they call issues papers, where they publish a series of questions about a particular topic and invite people to send in submissions on that topic. So PWDA and probably most disability rights and advocacy organizations have been involved in creating various submissions on a systemic level. If you would like to be involved in one of those or organize one, I'm sure that there would be a number of, well, it would probably depend on what the topic was, which organization is the best one to contact, but certainly I imagine that PWDA might be one of them. Danielle, is there anything you want to add to that one on the topic of individual advocacy clients that you've spoken to and they're sharing their personal story? Does it ever come up that they want to do a more systemic submission?
Yes, so that has been the case with a few of our clients. In those circumstances, generally the client already has sort of is part of an organization or is part of a community group, and we've provided sort of advice on how to frame that submission, because it does look quite different to the individual submissions that people do. We found also in those circumstances, a lot of people wanted to do an individual submission plus the systemic submission. So yeah, we definitely help people navigate that, but it is easier to do if there is an organization or some sort of community group already involved is my recommendation. Yeah.
Thanks, Danielle. We've got a question from Zoom. Who can a person or a family member complain to when the NDIA or another government organisation has harmed me? Ryan, do you want to take that one?
Yes, I will. There are throughout I guess with all organisations, there is a complaint pathway. Having said that, though, we do recognise and we do hear that complaint pathway can be sometimes not effective. What I recommend you do is give us a call and make an appointment to speak to a lawyer about your particular situation so that we can give you some more tailored information and advice about a pathway that might work better for you. Nevertheless, though, if you share your experience with the Disability Royal Commission and let them know what your experience has been with using a complaints pathway, that will be quite beneficial, because we have heard quite often that, you know, particularly with the NDIA, the complaints process is not always effective.
Thanks, Rania. And yes, we've certainly, for anyone who's been following the public hearings, the commissioners are quite interested in that. They do often ask questions of witnesses sort of about their experience, in the case of lived experience witnesses, about whether there was an effective complaints pathway or how they found the complaints pathway. And when there are organisations sending representatives to public hearings, they do usually ask them about their complaints policies and how effective they are and how accessible they are. And quite often those organisations don't have very good answers to those questions. So it is very understandable to be confused about who to talk to about that sort of situation. And definitely you're welcome to contact Your Story for specific legal advice dependent on your situation.
Maggie, if you don't mind, I'd just like to add a bit more information to the earlier question about group private sessions. Just to let everybody know that the support services are in the process of getting advice about group private sessions. And when we have a response to that, we'll share out the information when we circulate the recording of today's webinar. So stay tuned.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Rania. Final questions. Does the Disability Royal Commission intend to provide everyone who registers by the 30th of June with a private session?
I'll answer that.
Yes.
Yeah. Look, the intention of the Commission is yes, but they actually won't know till after the 30th of June when they've received all the private session registrations, but they do hope to be able to provide everyone with a private session.
Thanks, Rania. And last one, someone has written in, would television ads be effective for all to show the ongoing trauma we experience each time we are discriminated against, or what types of discrimination there is? So I'm going to throw that out for a general conversation, I think, because that is a big topic, how to get people to understand what discrimination is and what a huge issue is and what we experience. What does everyone think about how effective television ads might be at communicating and educating on that topic?
I think they can be quite effective, and I actually think this is a really good recommendation to make to the Royal Commission, that this is a really good way of raising awareness in the community about discrimination and the impact that it has on people's lives.
I can add that, you know, I think anything that will help to bring that to a conscious level and create a discussion will be helpful, as well as will bring up emotions. So I think it's really important from education point of view to be communicating in all sorts of modalities, trauma impacts and what it means, what is abuse, neglect, exploitation. Some of us, you know, may be living in conditions that apply, but we've never used that language because that was part of, you know, the only reality we lived in. So being exposed to different stories, different language that will allow us to verbalize our personal experiences will be very valuable, but as well as will bring up some emotions for some of us, which is part part of growing in any space.
Yeah, and I think the only thing I would add is actually kind of going back to Rania's point that this sort of question is actually like basically pitching a campaign idea for, you know, I'm sure not just television, but social media and other forms, so we engage the most people. And pitching those sorts of ideas are actually really important to the Royal Commission. They're not just looking for your experiences of exploitation, abuse, neglect, and violence, which also, you know, all of the bad stuff, all of the hard stuff that you've been through, but they're also really interested in knowing, what do you want the world to look like next? What are your solutions? Because we want to make sure that, you know, disabled people are not just seen as sad stories, but also really effective agents of change, and that we have things to say, we have solutions to give. And if you start with us, then it can only get better from here.
Thanks, Danielle. That's right. Nothing about us without us. The Royal Commission absolutely wants to hear about solutions. They want to hear about everyone's ideas for change, and people with disability are the most important people to listen to on that front, because we have been living what the world is like now, and we are the closest to it and have the most information essentially about what it's like and what needs to change. So yeah, definitely, if you would like to send the Royal Commission some ideas about ways to improve public attitudes and discrimination, or any of the other issues that they're looking into, because like I said at the beginning, it is a huge topic. They're just looking into so many things because people with disability are still experiencing so many problems. And that's why there's a Royal Commission in the first place. So yeah, even if you've already made a submission or had a private session or whatever, like I said, you're allowed to send in as many as you want. So feel free to write something about what you want to change and how, and send that in as well, because I'm sure that they would appreciate it. Yeah, so we're nearly at the end. So I'd like to thank all of our guest speakers and everyone attending. So this was a really good session. There's a link there should be a link in the Zoom chat to the DRC website where you can register for a private session, and we'll share that on the Facebook live stream comments as well. And for everyone who registered through the Eventbrite, there will be an email going around with the recording of this session and also any links and further information that we've been talking about. So do remember that free support is available for people who want to share their stories and their ideas for change with the Disability Royal Commission. We've got a PowerPoint slide that should be up now that has contact details for the 3 organizations that have been involved in this. We'd love to hear from you. There'll also be a survey which you can complete by scanning the QR code or following the link on the screen at the end of the webinar. Like I said, the recording will be sent around, and it will also be available on the Your Story and People with Disability Australia Facebook pages, and will be added to YouTube in the coming weeks. Yeah, so that's it. If this webinar has raised any concerns for you and you want to talk to someone about them, free counselling is available. You can call Blue Knot on 1-800-421-468. Thank you for coming, and thank you for asking your questions. So yeah, oh good, I see the link is up on the PowerPoint. So yes, we'd appreciate hearing about how this has gone for you and what you think we could do better next time. So feel free to click the link and complete the survey. Thanks everyone. Oh, I'm not sure if we've finished a little bit under time. Perhaps it does look like we have another couple of minutes. Do you think I should pick one last question? Oh, wait, no, we've already done the last question, haven't we? All right. Well, I'm sorry. I wasn't anticipating us getting to the end of it by this point, but I think I'll let everyone go and have another couple of minutes in your day to unwind after everything that's going on. So thanks, everybody, and goodbye.
Thanks, Maggie.
Thank you,
Thank you, Maggie.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.